The sun was just beginning to rise over the alien planet of Vayara, painting the sky in soft shades of violet and gold. Captain Ethan Core stood at the edge of the landing platform, his eyes taking in the shimmering towers and floating gardens of the capital city below. He had been here before on diplomatic missions, but this visit was different. This time he was not here to negotiate trade or share technology. He was here to find someone very special, a little girl who had been missing for years, the daughter of Queen Lyris, the ruler of Vayara. Ethan adjusted the straps of his light exploration pack and took a deep breath. The air was thick with the scent of blooming flora, and the gentle hum of the city below made him feel both excited and nervous. He knew that finding Arya, the queen's daughter, would not be simple. She had disappeared when she was very young, taken during a visit to the human sector. Rumors had spread across both worlds, but no one had been able to say where she was. Now it was up to him, a human soldier, to bring her back. As he descended the platform and walked toward the city streets, he noticed how alive the city felt. Towering crystal buildings reflected the morning light, sending colorful patterns across the streets. Small floating creatures hovered in the air, their transparent wings glinting. Vayarans, tall and graceful with skin that shimmered like liquid silver, moved through the streets, some greeting him politely, others simply curious about the human in their midst. Ethan smiled politely in return, his presence calm and respectful. He had learned quickly that humans had a way of connecting with others that was different from the Vayarans. He could sense emotions, intentions, and fears in subtle ways, a skill that no machine or even some Vayarans possessed. This skill, he hoped, would help him in his search. He stopped at a small marketplace near the edge of the city. Here, Vayarans traded rare fruits, glowing minerals, and delicately woven fabrics. Ethan spoke with the merchants, asking gentle questions about any recent sightings of a young girl traveling alone. Most shook their heads, but a few offered small hints, a fleeting shadow in the forest, a soft laughter carried by the wind. Ethan noted everything carefully. Every detail mattered. After hours of asking and observing, Ethan finally found a clue that made his heart race. A Vayaran child, no older than 10, had been seen talking to a girl matching Arya's description near the Crystal Forest, a mysterious place far from the city. Ethan's mind focused immediately. The forest was vast and filled with dangers, but he was determined to reach it. He walked back to his landing platform where his small exploration ship waited. The ship was compact but fast, designed for navigating the planet's varied terrain. As he took off, the city below shrank, and the endless expanse of forests, rivers, and glowing hills stretched before him. The forest he sought glowed faintly even in daylight, with crystalline trees reflecting the sun's rays like 1,000 tiny mirrors. Landing at the edge of the forest, Ethan stepped out carefully. The ground was soft, covered with moss that seemed to pulse with a gentle light. Birds with translucent feathers darted between the trees, their chirps melodic and calming. Ethan's senses were on high alert, not because of danger, but because he needed to understand the forest. He had learned that Vayara's creatures and plants often communicated in ways humans might not immediately notice. Observing carefully could reveal hidden paths or clues. Hours passed as Ethan moved deeper into the forest. He noticed faint footprints that shimmered slightly in the light, small handprints left in the moss, and occasional marks on the crystalline trees. He followed them patiently, knowing that rushing could lead him astray. He thought of the stories Queen Lyris had told her daughter, stories he had heard through intercepted recordings. A mother teaching her child about empathy, the importance of understanding others, and the beauty of observing life closely. Ethan hoped that Arya had carried those lessons with her, that she had learned to navigate the world with care. By late afternoon, Ethan reached a clearing where the sunlight fell in golden beams through the crystalline canopy. There, playing with a small group of glowing creatures, was a girl. Her hair shimmered like spun silver, her eyes were wide and curious, and her laughter echoed through the forest like music. Ethan's heart caught in his chest. This was her, Arya. He did not rush forward. Instead, he sat on a fallen crystal log at the edge of the clearing, observing. He saw how she moved, gentle and careful with the creatures around her. She noticed him after a while, tilting her head with curiosity. Ethan raised a hand slowly in greeting, smiling softly. Arya hesitated for a moment, then mimicked the gesture, a cautious smile appearing on her face. Ethan could see her intelligence, her kindness, and her curiosity shining through. He knew that trust would take time. She could not be hurried. She had lived alone for years, relying on her own skills and instincts. He spent the next few hours interacting with her, not with words at first, but with gestures, showing her he meant no harm. He mimicked her movements with the glowing creatures, slowly gaining her confidence. By the evening, Arya was smiling freely, laughing as they experimented with the strange plants and luminescent streams around them. As night fell, the forest glowed in shades of blue and violet. Ethan set up a small, safe camp at the edge of the clearing. He shared food and water with Arya, showing her the care that humans naturally gave. He told her simple stories of his world, of Earth, and the people there, speaking gently about the possibilities of meeting her mother again. Arya listened intently, her eyes wide with wonder. Ethan realized that this first day had been about connection, not rescue. The human ability to empathize, to slowly build trust, was what had allowed him to reach this point. He knew the journey ahead would require patience, understanding, and respect for Arya's world. Before they slept, Arya showed Ethan a small collection of treasures she had gathered over the years: shiny stones, glowing feathers, and small carved figures. Ethan smiled, seeing how resourceful and creative she had become. This girl had survived, grown, and thrived in a world so different from Earth, and yet her heart remained open. That night, under the softly glowing canopy of the crystal forest, Ethan felt a quiet hope. He had found her, the lost daughter of the queen, and the journey to bring her home would continue. But for now, he would rest, knowing that tomorrow would bring new discoveries, new moments of laughter, and the first steps toward a reunion that would change the lives of humans and Vaerans alike. As the stars appeared in the alien sky, Arya curled up beside him, trusting this human who had appeared in her forest. Ethan watched the constellations, thinking of Queen Lyris and the tears she must have shed over her lost child. He promised himself silently that he would return the girl safely, using every bit of ingenuity, patience, and compassion that made humans special. And so the first day of their journey ended, not with triumph or conflict, but with trust, hope, and the quiet bond of two very different beings, united by kindness and understanding. The morning light filtered through the crystalline canopy of the forest, casting dancing patterns of blue and gold on the soft moss below. Arya stirred first, her silver hair brushing against the glowing plants, and she peeked at Ethan with wide, curious eyes. The human smiled gently and gestured for her to follow him as he began to move deeper into the forest. Today, they would begin the journey toward the city, but first, Ethan wanted to understand Arya's world and how she had survived in it so far. As they walked, Ethan noticed how Arya interacted with every plant and creature they passed. She spoke softly to the tiny, luminous insects that hovered near her hand, guiding them to flowers, and she tapped the crystalline trees with a rhythm that seemed almost musical. Ethan realized that her years in the forest had given her skills and insights that humans rarely possessed. She could sense life in ways he could only begin to understand. "Can you show me how you do that?" Ethan asked, pointing to a small creature with wings like delicate glass. Arya nodded eagerly and motioned for him to follow her to a cluster of glowing mushrooms. She moved her hands in gentle circles, and the tiny winged creatures responded, hovering and swirling around them. Ethan imitated her movements, laughing softly when the creatures landed on his arms. Arya's laughter rang out, and for a moment the worries of their mission faded. "Your mother taught you well," Ethan said after a while, speaking carefully. "I can see she gave you patience and kindness." Arya's eyes widened and she tilted her head. She had only vague memories of her mother, but something in Ethan's words stirred recognition and longing. They continued through the forest, following a narrow stream that shimmered in the sunlight. The water seemed alive, reflecting not just the sky but the creatures beneath its surface. Ethan noted the path carefully, knowing that later they might need to retrace it. He also observed how Arya tested each step, careful not to disturb the forest unnecessarily, a skill she had honed over years of exploration. By mid-morning, they reached a hill that overlooked a wide valley filled with strange, bioluminescent plants and floating rocks. Ethan paused, taking in the view. He could see how the forest changed in subtle ways depending on the angle of sunlight, and he wondered how many other hidden paths might exist here. He realized that this world required more than strength or tools to navigate. It demanded curiosity, attention, and respect. Ethan gestured for Arya to sit with him on a large, smooth rock. He took out a small device from his pack, one that could record their journey and communicate with the queen if needed. He explained in simple terms how it worked, showing her the buttons and lights. Arya's eyes sparkled with fascination as she pressed the buttons herself, watching tiny holographic images of the forest appear in midair. "You see," Ethan said, pointing at the images, "this can help us find safe ways to move and tell your mother we are on our way." Arya nodded seriously, understanding the importance of their mission even at her young age. She took the device carefully, treating it with the same gentleness she showed toward the forest creatures. After a short rest, they began moving again, this time descending into the valley. The forest became denser here, the light dimmer, and the air filled with the hum of strange creatures. Ethan noticed that the path Arya chose seemed almost invisible to someone unfamiliar with the forest, yet she moved confidently, adjusting her steps for the terrain. Her instincts guided them safely past slippery moss patches, shallow streams, and low-hanging crystalline branches. As they walked, Ethan asked about her life in the forest, and Arya shared small stories with a shy smile. She spoke of the creatures she had befriended, the berries she had learned were safe to eat, and the small, hidden spaces where she rested at night. Ethan listened carefully, asking questions and offering gentle guidance without pressing her. He knew that trust was fragile, and he did not want to break it. At one point, they reached a clearing filled with tall, glowing flowers that swayed as if in rhythm with the wind. Arya ran ahead, twirling among the blooms, and Ethan watched her with admiration. She was free, curious, and alive, yet her heart carried the ache of missing her mother. Ethan understood that this journey was not just about bringing her home. It was about helping her understand that she could trust again. They paused for lunch beside a small, sparkling pond. Ethan had brought simple food from his ship, but Arya showed him how to gather edible plants from the forest. Together they made a small meal, laughing at their attempts to mimic each other's techniques. Ethan marveled at how quickly she learned and adapted, realizing that this adaptability was a uniquely human trait he had always admired, now mirrored in Arya. After lunch, the forest grew thicker, and the terrain became more challenging. Ethan noticed strange patterns in the trees, clusters of luminescent moss forming almost like arrows pointing in certain directions. He studied them carefully and realized they might be natural markers, guiding those who knew the forest well. Arya confirmed this instinctively, nodding as she pointed out subtle signs he might have missed. Together they followed these markers, navigating safely toward the outskirts of the forest. As evening approached, Ethan noticed a soft, melodic hum in the distance. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it carried a sense of familiarity and comfort. Arya's eyes widened as she tilted her head, listening intently. Ethan explained that it was a form of communication among the forest creatures, a signal they used to stay connected. Arya reached out her hand, and a small glowing creature landed gently on her palm, chirping in response to the hum. Ethan smiled, realizing that Arya's bond with this world was deep and true. Night fell quickly in the forest, and the air grew cooler. Ethan set up another small camp, this time near a cluster of towering crystalline trees that glowed softly. He arranged simple bedding for Arya, showing her how to stay warm and safe through the night. She watched carefully, absorbing every action, every movement. Ethan felt a sense of pride. This girl had survived alone for so long, yet she was eager to learn, to trust, and to connect. Before sleep, Ethan told her a story about Earth, of the vast oceans, tall mountains, and endless skies filled with stars. He spoke of people who built cities, discovered medicines, and created art and music. Arya listened quietly, her eyes wide with wonder, imagining a world she had never seen. Ethan emphasized how humans could solve problems not by force, but by curiosity, creativity, and understanding. He wanted her to know that these qualities, which made humans special, were part of her heritage too. Arya smiled sleepily, leaning against him for comfort. Ethan watched the stars appear in the alien sky, feeling a quiet sense of determination. Tomorrow they would move closer to the city, closer to her mother. But tonight he was content. They had built the foundation of trust, understanding, and hope. He knew that their journey would be long and challenges would come, but with patience, observation, and empathy, they could face anything together. As they drifted to sleep, the forest seemed to embrace them, glowing softly in the night. The hum of creatures, the whisper of the wind, and the glimmering light of the crystalline trees created a sense of calm and safety. Ethan felt a deep respect for this world and for the girl beside him. He understood that bringing Arya home would not just reunite a mother and daughter. It would bridge two worlds, showing that understanding and compassion could overcome distance, time, and uncertainty. Tomorrow, they would face new challenges, explore new paths, and learn more about each other. But for now, under the gentle light of the crystal forest, a human soldier and a lost alien princess rested, united by trust, curiosity, and the quiet power of human empathy. The morning sun rose slowly over the crystal forest, sending beams of golden light through the delicate, shimmering canopy. Ethan stirred from his small camp and saw Arya already awake, crouched beside the glowing plants, her hands carefully touching each leaf as if greeting an old friend. He smiled quietly. She had grown more confident in her movements since he had arrived, and yet there was a hint of hesitation in her eyes, a shadow of the loneliness she had lived with for so many years. "Good morning," Ethan said softly, rising to his feet. Arya looked up at him and smiled, her silver hair catching the light. They packed their small belongings and continued deeper into the forest, following a narrow path that twisted and turned like a living maze. Ethan knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but he also knew that Arya's knowledge of this land could guide them safely. As they walked, Ethan observed how she instinctively communicated with the creatures around them. Small, glowing insects hovered near her hand, and tiny, translucent birds darted through the trees as if recognizing her presence. She spoke in gentle tones to the creatures, and they responded with soft chirps and movements. Ethan marveled at this connection. Humans had empathy, curiosity, and patience, qualities that allowed them to reach places others could not. He realized that Arya, in her own way, shared these traits, making her uniquely capable of navigating both worlds. Hours passed as they moved through the dense forest. The air was filled with the gentle hum of the forest, the rustle of leaves, and the distant calls of creatures hidden from view. Ethan asked Arya about her favorite places in the forest, hoping to learn more about her world. She led him to a small pond surrounded by crystalline stones, where the water reflected the sky like a perfect mirror. Here she told him stories of her adventures, how she had discovered safe paths, hidden nests, and secret groves filled with luminescent plants. Ethan listened carefully, noting every detail. Each story was a piece of a larger map, a guide to the hidden sanctuary where Arya had spent her days. He realized that finding this place would not only ensure her safety, but also help him understand her life and prepare her for the journey ahead. By midday, they reached a section of the forest that grew darker and more mysterious. The trees towered high above, their crystalline branches forming intricate patterns that filtered the sunlight into soft, colorful beams. Ethan noticed faint markings on some of the trees, small scratches and symbols that seemed deliberate. He asked Arya about them, and she explained that they were natural signs left by the creatures and plants of the forest, guiding those who knew how to read them. Following these subtle signs, they entered a hidden valley where the sunlight barely reached the ground. The air was cool, and the forest floor glowed faintly with bioluminescent moss. Here, Ethan saw the first signs of the sanctuary. Small structures, crafted from living plants and crystal formations, were scattered throughout the valley. Bridges made of intertwined vines and glowing stones spanned shallow streams, and delicate platforms hung from the trees like natural balconies. Arya ran ahead, her eyes wide with excitement. "This is my home," she said softly, almost in awe. Ethan followed, careful to respect the natural balance of the sanctuary. He noticed how the creatures reacted to Arya's presence. Birds settled near her, small animals approached without fear, and the plants seemed to shimmer brighter as if welcoming her. It was clear that she had formed a deep bond with this place, and Ethan understood that any attempt to rush her away could break that trust. They reached the central part of the sanctuary, where a small crystal waterfall flowed into a clear pond. Here, Arya had built a tiny home using the natural materials of the forest, decorated with the treasures she had collected over the years. Ethan marveled at her creativity, small sculptures made from crystals, arrangements of glowing plants, and carefully crafted nests for the creatures she cared for. It was a home filled with life, laughter, and careful thought. Ethan knew that he had to gain her full trust before mentioning the journey back to the city. He spent the afternoon engaging with her in the sanctuary, learning about her daily routines and helping her with small tasks. He mimicked her careful movements, showing her that he could respect her way of life. Arya responded with cautious smiles and laughter, beginning to see him not just as a stranger, but as a companion and protector. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the sanctuary, Ethan and Arya sat by the crystal pond. The water reflected the colors of the sky, and the forest seemed to glow with a gentle light. Ethan spoke softly, telling her stories of his home on Earth, of oceans, forests, and mountains, and of people who built cities and created art and music. Arya listened with fascination, imagining a world beyond her forest. "Your mother is waiting for you," Ethan said gently, choosing his words carefully. "She has never stopped thinking about you. One day you will see her again." Arya's eyes widened, a mixture of hope and fear shining in them. She had dreamed of this reunion for years, but the thought of leaving the sanctuary that had been her home since childhood was daunting. Ethan understood her hesitation. He could not rush her. Instead, he asked her to show him the sanctuary in more detail. Arya led him to hidden groves, secret pathways, and the places where she had learned to fish, forage, and play with the forest creatures. Ethan observed her carefully, noting how she had grown resourceful, patient, and kind. She had survived alone, yet she remained open-hearted, ready to connect with another being. These qualities, he thought, were what made humans and those they guided special, the ability to trust, to learn, and to inspire. That night, as the stars appeared in the alien sky, Ethan set up a small camp near the waterfall. He and Arya shared a simple meal, laughing at their attempts to mimic each other's techniques in preparing food. Ethan noticed how she instinctively adapted to new tools and methods, a sign of her intelligence and creativity. Before sleep, they sat quietly by the water, watching the reflections of the stars shimmer on the surface. Ethan spoke softly about patience, understanding, and the importance of careful observation. He wanted Arya to know that their journey was not just about returning to the city. It was about learning to trust, to cooperate, and to face the unknown with confidence. Arya listened attentively, her hand resting lightly on Ethan's. She asked questions about Earth, about humans, and about the people he had met. Ethan answered with gentle honesty, sharing the wonders of his world while respecting hers. In those quiet moments, a bond formed between them, built on trust, curiosity, and shared wonder. The night passed peacefully, the sanctuary glowing softly under the alien sky. Ethan watched Arya sleep, feeling a deep sense of purpose. He knew that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but he also knew that with patience, empathy, and understanding, they could face them together. As dawn broke, Ethan woke to find Arya already awake, exploring the sanctuary with the creatures she had befriended. He packed their belongings once more, preparing for the journey back to the city. This time, Arya walked beside him willingly, her trust in him growing with each step. They moved carefully through the forest, following paths that Arya knew intimately. Along the way, Ethan encouraged her to notice details she might have overlooked, the subtle changes in the air, the patterns in the leaves, the sounds of the creatures. He wanted her to understand that knowledge and observation were powerful tools, and that her abilities could guide them safely. By midday, they reached the edge of the forest. Beyond lay the open plains that led toward the city. Ethan paused, looking back at the sanctuary, knowing that it had been a safe and nurturing place for Arya. He understood that leaving it would be difficult for her, but he also knew that the reunion with her mother would bring a joy unlike any she had known. Arya hesitated, looking back at the forest that had been her home for so long. Ethan knelt beside her, speaking gently. "You have learned so much here," he said. "You are strong, clever, and kind, and soon you will see your mother. She will be so happy to meet the amazing person you have become." Ethan walked beside her, offering guidance and reassurance with every step. As they crossed the plains, the city's skyline appeared on the horizon, shimmering in the distance. Ethan could sense Arya's excitement growing, mingled with a touch of nervousness. He reminded her that this journey was about trust, patience, and courage, all qualities she had shown in abundance. By the time they reached the outskirts of the city, Arya was walking confidently, her head held high. Ethan smiled, knowing that the next part of their journey, reuniting her with Queen Lyris, was drawing near. But he also knew that this moment, the discovery of the sanctuary and the growth of trust between them, was just as important. It was the foundation that would carry them through the final steps of their adventure. That evening, as the city lights began to twinkle in the alien dusk, Ethan and Arya found a quiet place to rest. They sat together, watching the sky and talking softly about what lay ahead. Arya asked questions about her mother, about the city, and about the people she would meet. Ethan answered with patience, guiding her gently through the unknown. For the first time in many years, Arya felt safe, understood, and ready. She had survived alone, but now she had a companion who respected her world, her knowledge, and her heart. Ethan had shown her that humans were not just outsiders. They were guides, protectors, and friends capable of great empathy and understanding. And as the stars shone above the city, Ethan felt a quiet sense of hope. The hidden sanctuary had prepared Arya for the world beyond, and together they would face the final steps of their journey. The reunion with her mother was close, and the bond between human and alien, teacher and pupil, friend and protector, had grown strong. Tomorrow they would enter the city, and Arya would meet Queen Lyris. But tonight, in the gentle glow of the forest and the quiet bond they had formed, Ethan and Arya rested, ready for the next chapter of their journey. The first light of morning touched the horizon as Ethan and Arya approached the edge of the city. The skyline shimmered like a jewel under the rising sun, towers of crystal and light stretching toward the sky, with gardens floating between them and gentle bridges connecting each level. Ethan felt a mix of anticipation and responsibility. This was the final stage of their journey before they could reunite Arya with her mother. Arya walked beside him, her steps careful but confident. She paused occasionally to observe the city from a distance, noting the way the sunlight reflected off the buildings and the way creatures moved through the streets. Ethan could see both excitement and nervousness in her eyes. She had never been in a place so large, so alive with unfamiliar sights and sounds. "Are you ready?" Ethan asked gently. Arya looked at him and nodded, though a flicker of doubt crossed her face. He took her hand lightly and squeezed it reassuringly. "We will go slowly. You can watch, learn, and ask questions. No one will rush you." Arya's smile returned, small but bright, and she followed him as they entered the city. The streets were filled with Vaerans going about their daily routines. The air carried the faint scent of flowers and sweet fruits, and the soft hum of energy from the buildings created a calm, steady rhythm. Ethan observed everything carefully, noting the pathways and people who might be helpful in guiding them closer to the palace. He also noticed that Arya watched closely, learning how the city functioned, how the creatures interacted with the inhabitants, and how the buildings were constructed to harmonize with the natural environment. They paused at a quiet plaza filled with glowing fountains. Ethan knelt to Arya's level and explained, "This city is your mother's home. Soon you will see her. Remember, your courage and kindness will guide you. She will recognize you immediately." Arya took a deep breath and nodded, gripping his hand. Ethan smiled softly. He had seen many moments like this before, the moment a person must step into the unknown with faith and hope. As they moved forward, Arya noticed small details that intrigued her. Children played near the fountains, creatures hovered in the air, and merchants displayed glowing fruits and rare crystals. She asked questions about each site, and Ethan answered patiently, showing her the wonders of her mother's world while helping her feel comfortable and safe. They reached a quiet corridor lined with softly glowing trees and gentle streams. Here, Ethan explained that this path would take them closer to the palace. Arya's pace slowed, and she glanced nervously at the tall gates in the distance. Ethan crouched beside her again, speaking softly. "It is okay to feel nervous. Your mother will be gentle and kind. She has thought about you every day. Soon you will see each other." She tightened her hand in Ethan's, and together they continued through the corridor. Birds with translucent wings flew above them, and small, glowing insects danced in the air. The city seemed to welcome her as much as Ethan had, and he noticed how she relaxed slightly, curiosity and wonder replacing some of her fear. They reached the palace gates, enormous and made of crystal that reflected the morning light in 1,000 colors. A few palace attendants noticed them and approached respectfully, bowing lightly. Ethan gave a polite nod and spoke quietly to Arya. "These people will help us. You can trust them." Arya stepped forward, her eyes wide with amazement at the grandeur surrounding her. A gentle attendant led them through the gates and into the palace gardens. Here, the air was filled with the scent of alien flowers, and streams of light moved gracefully through hanging crystal vines. Ethan stayed beside Arya, guiding her gently as they approached the center of the garden. A figure stood there, tall and regal, with eyes that seemed to glow with both wisdom and love. Queen Lyris had been waiting, her heart beating faster with every moment. Arya froze for a moment, uncertainty in her eyes. Ethan knelt beside her, whispering softly, "It is okay. She is your mother. She will understand you." Slowly, Arya stepped forward, her small hand still in Ethan's. Her eyes never left the Queen's, and the Queen's gaze softened, recognizing the child she had dreamed of for so long. When Arya finally realized who she was looking at, tears filled her eyes. She ran forward, but Ethan stayed back, giving them space. The Queen knelt down as Arya reached her, and they embraced. The world seemed to pause in that moment, the air filled with soft light, and even the creatures around them seemed to sense the joy of the reunion. Ethan watched quietly, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. This was why humans were special. Their patience, empathy, and understanding had made this reunion possible. Without force or aggression, without violence or fear, he had guided a lost child back to her mother. The bond they had formed in the forest, the trust that had grown slowly day by day, had paved the way for this moment. After the initial embrace, Arya and the Queen sat together in the garden, holding hands and speaking softly. Ethan could see Arya sharing stories of her time in the forest, of the creatures she had befriended, and of the sanctuary she had built. The Queen listened with gentle fascination, asking questions and smiling at her daughter's observations. Ethan stayed nearby, observing the interaction. He noticed the subtle ways the Queen mirrored Arya's gestures, the patience in her tone, and the kindness in her gaze. This reunion was not just an emotional meeting. It was a learning moment for both. Arya learned about her heritage, about the strength and kindness of her mother, and the Queen learned of her daughter's resilience, creativity, and courage. As the day progressed, the palace attendants and citizens came to witness the reunion. They brought gifts of flowers, small creatures, and shimmering stones. Ethan noticed how Arya adapted gracefully to the attention, her natural empathy guiding her interactions. She smiled and laughed, sharing her stories, and even teaching some of the younger children how to interact gently with the creatures she had met in the forest. The Queen guided Arya to the palace hall, a place filled with light and reflective crystal walls. Ethan followed at a respectful distance. Here, Arya learned more about her mother's responsibilities, the history of their people, and the importance of harmony with nature. Ethan quietly observed, proud of how she absorbed information and asked thoughtful questions. By evening, the reunion had grown into a celebration of understanding and learning. Arya and the Queen walked through the palace gardens together, accompanied by Ethan. They shared stories of Earth and Veyara, of creatures, landscapes, and discoveries. The bond between human and alien, guide and pupil, protector and child had created a bridge between worlds. As night fell, Ethan prepared to leave. He knelt beside Arya, speaking softly. "Your mother will care for you now. You are safe. You are strong. And I know that whatever comes next, you will face it with courage and kindness." Arya hugged him tightly, and even in her happiness, he could sense her deep gratitude. The Queen approached Ethan, her eyes filled with warmth. "You have done something remarkable," she said softly. "Your patience, your understanding, and your kindness have brought my daughter back to me. You are truly a friend of our people." Ethan nodded respectfully, feeling the quiet pride that came from a mission completed without harm, without fear, only through empathy and intelligence. That night, as Arya slept in the safety of her mother's palace, Ethan looked out over the city. The lights reflected off the crystal towers, and the gentle hum of the city filled the air. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that humans had once again shown the power of patience, empathy, and understanding. The journey had been long and filled with careful steps, but the reunion had proven that force was not needed to create bonds, to restore hope, or to bridge worlds. Humans were special, not because of strength or weapons, but because of their ability to connect, to understand, and to guide others with kindness. Ethan took one last look at Arya and her mother before departing. He knew that their journey together had ended, but the lessons they had shared, the trust, the curiosity, and the empathy would remain forever. As he prepared to leave the palace, he felt a quiet hope that this reunion would inspire others, humans and Vaerans alike, to approach challenges with patience, understanding, and compassion. The night sky over Veyara shimmered with a million stars, and Ethan felt a connection not only to this world, but to the future they were building together. One child reunited with her mother could remind two worlds of the power of empathy, trust, and the unique gifts humans bring to the universe. And so, the city slept under the gentle glow of crystal towers, while a human soldier quietly walked away, knowing that his mission had succeeded in the most meaningful way possible. No force was needed, no danger confronted, only patience, understanding, and the quiet power of the human heart had restored a family and bridged a universe. The morning after the reunion arrived softly, as if the planet itself wished to give the mother and daughter more time together. Gentle light filtered through the crystal windows of the palace, casting calm patterns across the wide halls. Arya woke slowly, feeling something she had not felt in many years, safety without loneliness. She turned and saw her mother sitting nearby, watching her with a peaceful smile. Queen Lyris reached out and brushed Arya's hair gently, almost afraid the moment might disappear if she moved too quickly. "You are really here," she said softly. Arya smiled and nodded, her eyes filling with quiet happiness. For the first time since she could remember, she did not feel like she had to watch the world alone. Outside, the palace was already awake. News of Arya's return had spread across the city, not as loud celebration, but as warm relief. Citizens moved with lighter steps, and the gardens seemed brighter, as if the plants themselves were responding to the joy in the air. Ethan stood at the edge of the main balcony, looking out over the city. He felt content, but also ready to step back. His role was nearly finished. Later that morning, Arya and her mother walked together through the palace gardens. The queen showed her places from her own childhood, quiet corners where she had once read, thought, and dreamed. Arya listened carefully, asking gentle questions and sharing stories of the forest. The queen listened with pride and amazement, realizing how strong and wise her daughter had become on her own. Ethan followed at a respectful distance. He noticed how Arya walked more confidently now, no longer unsure of her place. She belonged here, yet she carried the forest with her in the way she touched plants and greeted creatures. The queen noticed it too. "She has learned balance," Lyra said quietly to Ethan. "You helped her keep her heart open." "I only helped her believe it." Many had never spoken to a human before, yet now they saw one standing humbly near the edge of the hall, not seeking attention or reward. They saw Arya glance at him often, her eyes full of trust. In that simple exchange, something shifted. Humans were no longer distant outsiders. They were partners in understanding. After the gathering, Arya approached Ethan. "Will you leave now?" she asked quietly. Ethan knelt so they were at the same level. "Soon," he said honestly, "but I will never be far, and neither will what you learned. I want you to have it." Together, they showed the adults that learning worked best when shared gently. Arya began attending lessons with scholars and caretakers, but she often brought forest ideas into the halls. She suggested open gardens instead of closed rooms, quiet listening instead of fast decisions. Queen Lyris encouraged this, seeing how her daughter's experiences brought new wisdom to old traditions. One evening, as the sky shifted into deep shades of blue and silver, Queen Lyris invited Ethan to walk with her along the high terraces. "You could have taken her by force," she said thoughtfully. "Others might have tried, but you did not. That is why humans are special," she said. "Not because of what you build, but because of how you choose to act when you could do otherwise." "You can visit," Arya said quickly. "I will show you the new gardens, and the forest will always remember you. You showed us that care can travel farther than fear." He thought of how a single choice to be patient had changed everything. No battles were fought, no threats were made. Only listening, walking, and trusting had brought a lost child home. Back on the surface, Arya watched until the ship disappeared into the sky. She felt sad, but not empty. She had learned that goodbyes did not mean loss when understanding remained. She turned to her mother and took her hand. "I want to help others," Arya said, "like he helped me." A child who had lived alone, yet returned with wisdom beyond her years. On Earth, Ethan shared his experience not as a mission report, but as a lesson. He spoke of slowing down, of listening first, and of the strength found in kindness. Many listened. Some changed how they worked, how they explored, how they reached out into the unknown. Far across the stars, Arya stood one evening in the palace gardens, looking up at the sky. She remembered the forest, the journey, and the human who had walked beside her without trying to control her. She smiled softly. The universe was vast and full of mystery, but she was no longer afraid of it. She had learned that even across worlds, someone could choose to care. And that choice could bring light where there had once been silence. And so, without force or fear, without violence or loss, a simple truth echoed quietly through two civilizations: that the greatest strength was not power, but empathy, and that sometimes the most heroic thing a human could do was help someone find their way home.